Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank the witnesses, and I look forward to both of us working together in our new roles on the subcommittee. And I think, as you mentioned, this is a very important topic that we all need to be focused on. You know, I often joke, it's kind of an inside Armed Services Committee joke, that one of the best things we could do with regard to our competition with China is take the entirety of the Federal Acquisition Regulation and DoD 5000 series, package it up, stamp it top secret, dump it in front of the Chinese embassy, and pray to God that they think it's so important that they use it in their system the way they steal so many other things from us. That would be really helpful. But kidding aside, I think the department's ability to do it correctly, but with speed. I'm kind of about speed when we look at some of these issues. To meet the strategic challenges of today is so important. And I think most of us have recognized that our acquisition system, as we move into this era of great power competition, is becoming a definite strategic disadvantage. Disadvantage. This is a complete self-inflicted wound. And what I want to encourage the witnesses today to do is think big. Think big. Because I believe that the members of this committee, Democrats and Republicans, are looking for big ideas. This is a very bipartisan issue. There's not many members of the Senate or the Armed Services Committee that are pleased by the fact that it took 20 years to design and deploy the F-35, are pleased by the fact that this was, Mr. Chairman, in the news yesterday, the Navy Times, an article that says China simultaneously commissions 3 major Navy warships on the anniversary of the PLA's Navy. So I would agree certainly with the chairman on the big issues that we need to look at. I would also agree that we need to look at other things like this whole issue of the valley of death for emerging technologies, which I know many of you are focused on, ways to cut through the middle management of the acquisition bureaucracy, what I've often referred to as the sludge. It's not 100% clear what it actually does. And I think you can get rid of entire sections if you look at our history of the acquisition program and not lose a lot of excellence or quality. And then finally, and I think in 2020 was a rough year for our country, for the world, no doubt, but we did see the development, acquisition, and distribution of 2 brand new vaccines in less than a year in Operation Warp Speed. Now, granted, that wasn't a DoD issue, but I think there are clearly lessons to be learned from this important accomplishment where when the government and the private sector were very focused on getting a quality product out quickly for the benefit of the people in our nation, we did it. We did it. So, again, I want to thank you for holding this hearing, Mr. Chairman, and I look forward to our witnesses' insights on these issues. But please, don't nibble around the edges here. This is a huge national security issue. I think there's bipartisan support for big ideas, but we're going to need them from all of you. Thank you. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me follow up on this discussion of competition, but take it in a little bit of a different direction. You know, the Pentagon's big and bureaucratic. A lot of the big defense companies are big and bureaucratic. That doesn't always kind of lend itself to competition and speed. One of the questions I have, and it's not just a jobs program, but how do you get more small businesses, more innovators plugged in to the system? Let me give you 2 examples in different parts of the country. One that I'm very proud of, in Alaska, we have this company called Travarius. And it essentially was a startup that made what I refer to as kind of like Zambonis for aircraft carriers. It's the deck cleaner, very high tech. And they did it completely in a town outside of Anchorage called Palmer, Alaska. I visited the shop, and they won this contract with the Navy and the Marine Corps. So really, really impressive. They're doing that in Alaska. At one point, they had a Navy contracting officer saying, hey, if you really want to continue this and grow, you need to move your operations to the lower 48. Trust me, I heard about that, called the Secretary of the Navy saying that's not good. The former staff director here on the Armed Services Committee now works for a company called Anduril Industries, and they are also a startup, very high tech. So how can we plug companies like this more into the system who have a hard time breaking in, but in many ways bring that entrepreneurship, non-bureaucratic aggressiveness that is really the American style, and I think the Pentagon could benefit from?
I'll take that if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I think I have two sort of different aspects of that I would like to respond with. So first, the Congress has given us some contracting authorities that really focus the department on how do we engage small businesses, non-traditional companies. We use these tools extensively throughout COVID. Commercial Solutions Opening, you may have heard of Air Force Pitch Days. Basically, it's using a less, you mentioned an RFP that's this big. Mm-hmm. It really gives us an opportunity to engage with companies with much less buy-in on their part as far as documentation and paperwork. So had great experiences. We've actually issued billions in COVID response using these tools that allow us to do that.
Are you seeing that has a lot of promise?
Absolutely, yes. And the CSO is a temporary authorization, so that's one thing that we would definitely ask you to consider, the great benefit that we've seen out of CSOs. On the other side, on the weapon system or on the side of delivering systems, one of the things the adaptive acquisition framework gives the program manager the opportunity to separate out into multiple pathways. So for some things, we need to use the traditional approach of milestone-based gates that you would traditionally think of with a submarine or with an aircraft carrier. We've given the ability to pull parts of the program out, subcomponents or software, and leverage a different part of the pathway to deliver that capability. And by leveraging that, along with open systems and then that digital acquisition, we can actually compete subcomponents or compete the software elements to those small innovative businesses, even while we have prime contractors who might be working on the larger system. So those would be my two responses back to that question.
Great, thank you on that. Dr. O'Toole, your testimony, and I'm going to quote it again, the chairman and I both looked at each other like, damn, quote, virtually none of the programs assessed in FY20 were survivable against relevant cyber threats. I hope our adversaries aren't watching this hearing. They often do watch these hearings. But what in the hell are we going to do to close that gap? That is shocking and, well, concerning, shocking.
Yes, Senator, I totally agree that it is a very large concern, and I can assure you that before I made that statement that I had gone through security review. Every program is different, and there are some common themes. We need a capable cyber workforce in order to be able to actually do that. That includes the cyber workforce in the program offices, but it also includes the cyber workforce on the NSA-certified red teams.
And are we implementing that, you think?
We are at different elements of that, and as a matter of fact, Congress has provided us some funding associated with some pilot programs where we've been able to reach out to help with some of that cyber development of workforce by going into providing some scholarships to get new people to come into the Department of Defense from either as a senior, and then there's a requirement for them to come in and work for the Department of Defense, or as a master's level, and we get them through that. And we have a number of pilot programs in a number of different institutions around the country, Senator. As one small example, but I mentioned in my teeny workforce S&T strategy going forward, workforce and having the workforce and having a capable workforce is certainly one of our concerns in moving
Well, if you
forward.
need authorities or money on that, I think this committee would be very supportive of trying to help close this vulnerability that we have.
Yes, sir, and we certainly would appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Cummings, I want to follow up on a discussion we had in this subcommittee last October with your predecessor, Undersecretary Lord, and she expressed the importance to me of improving the National Defense Stockpile Acquisition Authorities, particularly as it relates to securing critical minerals and rare earth elements, other elements, mining elements that are really important to our national defense industrial base, to our renewable energy sector, to our high-tech sector. And as you know, China dominates all of this. They don't need to. We have these resources. We have these minerals in the good old USA, a lot of them in my state, great state of Alaska. So what are we doing? What should we be continuing to do to make sure the department has the critical minerals we need to support our industrial base and not be so dependent on China? We all know, just ask the Japanese, it's not a matter of if, but when Xi Jinping and the others are going to say, you know what, America, we're going to cut off critical minerals, rare earths, and you won't be able to produce F-35s or a whole host of other technologies. How are we getting off that dependence, dangerous dependence?
Thank you, Senator. That's a great question, and I, too, am equally concerned with rare earth elements and critical minerals. It is an area that our Office of Industrial Policy has spent a significant amount of time studying. We've made some strategic investments with the Defense Production Act, as well as some other tools we have to make investments. Those are at the very initial stages of understanding what we would need to do. To your point, we do have the ability to mine those rare earth elements. We need to be able to also process them in the United States.
Yeah.
And I have some detail that I'd be happy to send you on the record as far as percentage of mining, percentage of processing that we're looking to be able to do. We do owe back to the White House a 100-day report. The DoD has the lead from a supply chain perspective because of the stockpile management role that we have. We expect to be finishing that report here in the next month or so.
Good. Well, I think securing our supply chains, particularly as it relates to China in the critical mineral space, rare earth elements, other space, is a real good opportunity, Mr. Chairman, for bipartisan cooperation. To the extent you need more authorities in this area, you need to ask us what they are, and I guarantee you this committee will grant them. So let us know. Ms. Oakley, I'm going to ask my final question. It's a softball. I'm teeing it up for you. You're the expert. What are the top 3 priorities? You mentioned the lessons from the F-35. You mentioned the lessons from the Ford-class carrier. What are, from your perspective, the top 3 priorities we can implement, we should implement to make our system reliable but faster, right? We can't take on these 20-year projects when the Chinese are cranking out 3 Navy ships a day.
Yeah. I would say first and foremost, focus on incremental open systems. Incremental open systems enable these systems to be able to be fielded quickly and upgraded so that you get a minimum viable capability out there, and then it can be upgraded as the threat changes, increases, whatnot. And so the department's focus on that, I think, is going to be key to shortening timeframes for, acquisition. Too often in the past, we've gone with the one fell swoop approach, right, where we wanted everything right out of the gates versus what do we need now and what can we continue to do to upgrade the systems that we have to get there. So I think that's a huge priority. I think the department does need to focus on the outcomes that it's seeing of its programs. And cost and schedule are important, but they're not the only indicators, right? When you're focused on innovation, are we getting the warfighter what they need? And so that kind of user-in-the-loop feedback to be able to ensure that we're making, we're giving them what they need when they need it. And then I think continuing to focus on sustainment. I know it doesn't get a lot of play in acquisition discussions, but really thinking about that long-term impact of the decisions that you're making now. And you're seeing it right now with the F-35, where it's almost too expensive to fly and operate, right? We don't want to be in that position. And so putting focus on it earlier in the process will drive better outcomes in the long run.
Great answer. Thank you.